Imagine having the power to overcome, the power to succeed, the power for overwhelming victory. Imagine having that power at your fingertips and then not using it. Jesus made many profound statements that can and should rock our world. And how we respond to those impacts how we actually can progress. Often those statements are so profound that we rationalize them. And in doing so, it loses its power. Or it seems so incredible that we just kind of focus somewhere else. Or we get weird. For example, many years ago, I was at a church in Oregon. Which one doesn't matter. And I'm going to be speaking later. They had an old building. It's like a school auditorium with a wooden platform. And the prayer team was up there. Now, this is all very exciting and dramatic, but they're going around stomping on the floor. Now, you have to picture this. It's a wooden floor. It's hollow, so they're stomping, and it kind of bangs and echoes. And they're stomping on the head of the devil. Now, again, it was all very exciting, but I'm not quite sure Satan was going, "Oh, you got me that time." See, we either ignore it, rationalize it, or often we just get weird about it. But we need to recognize those times, those profound statements that should challenge us, that the power is literally at our fingertips. One of those profound statements was that He gave us the power to tread on serpents and scorpions and all the power of the enemy, and nothing by any means would harm us. Recognize, understanding what that means begins to expose why our results are so limited, why we don't have greater impact. See, He gave us the power. Now understand, our personal power is so small, so limited. We might as well say we have no real power. Because that's not what it means. See, that word power literally means He gave us the authority. He delegated His authority to us to access His power. So He gave us the authority to access His power to tread on serpents and scorpions and all the power of the enemy. And nothing would by any means harm us. That it's accessing, that it's spiritual authority that He's delegated to us. And it highlights again why our results are so often so insignificant. Because recognizing that, first off, if we just sit there and we're waiting for God to move on our behalf, God is saying, I gave you the authority to deal with this. Or what we do is we ignore that spiritual component. And so we, in our limited power, we set up a strategy, we rationalize, or with the big social issues of the day, we debate, we try to use and bring logic into the equation, and then we wonder why it has no impact. It's that recognition that every challenge at its core, to a greater or lesser degree, is a spiritual issue. And that as we begin to recognize that we can then begin to develop that pattern of seeking the Holy Spirit on how do we deal with this, that rather than just immediately trying to debate or whatever, that rather than creating our own strategy, we would develop that pattern of immediately turning to God, turning to the Holy Spirit, recognizing that there is, maybe it's small, maybe it's overwhelming, what is the spiritual component and how do we deal with this? And it's recognizing it's something we grow in and mature in, and God desires for us to grow and mature in it. That He has delegated His authority to us because He wants us to be His instrument of change and impact. Now, we also recognize, because again, every challenge has at its core, one of the reasons our response, our impact has been so insignificant is understanding. Remember, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. They're not natural, but they're mighty for tearing down strongholds. It's that mental shift of understanding that it's not just what we see, but understanding that spiritual impact, that spiritual influence behind it, and not being intimidated because God has given us the authority to overcome that, the authority to tap into His power. And remember, that authority, it literally means the power of choice. The power, it literally means the power of choice or the power to act. So when it says he gave us the power to tread on, it's literally he delegated that authority, and it's the power of choice. We have to choose to take it up. We have the power to act at our disposal if we will utilize it. Now, a couple of thoughts is the reminder that the authority God delegates to us. We have no authority over other people. And that the authority he delegates to us is always for the good, to bring blessing, to bring life and hope to situations. And we should be encouraged and challenged to begin to exercise that and grow in that, even though it might be a little bit intimidating. And also the recognition that it only grows and is empowered in relationship with God. And that's not just a salvation experience with Jesus, but that continual close relationship. I had a real epiphany once that when the disciples, they try to cast out the demon and they say to Jesus, we tried. He says, this kind does not go out by prayer and fasting. What is the ultimate result of prayer and fasting? Is growing closer to God. That the closer we are, the more intimately involved with God, the more accessible that authority is. Because again, it's not ours, it's always His, and it's always for the good, for blessing, for life and hope and impact in the world around us. You know, this is a great time to just accept that as a challenge so we don't have to understand all the nuances. And we couldn't, in a whole series of videos, put out all the nuances of what spiritual authority means. But it's time for us to recognize that God has given us that mantle of authority, and His plan is that we would use it to make an impact. And it's time for us to step out and begin to grow in it and watch God's power released.